Today on our 2007 GMC Sierra 1500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the SMI Air Force One supplemental braking system for motorhomes with air brakes. Part number SM99243. Here's a look at the main component of our braking system. The actuator is going to provide a proportional force on our brakes in our towed vehicle. What that means is, while we are traveling, when we apply our brakes in our RV, our braking system in our towed vehicle will match the amount of force being applied. That will allow our towed vehicle to stop on its own rather than the RV stopping both vehicles, in turn saving the brakes on the RV. This is to hook up to the RV so that if for some reason the vehicle comes apart from the back of the RV, this will pull and it'll apply the brakes on the vehicle being towed. Now we're going to test our light that you're going to see in the rear view camera of the RV. This is going to show when this comes on that our brakes are being applied in our towed vehicle. So to begin our installation, we need to find a place to mount our operating unit. It has a battery on the passenger side and has an open battery tray here on the driver's side, which would make a good place to mount it. Now if you see here on the edges, what I did, these don't come in the kit, but what I did is I put some hose clamps on the corners, and what I'm going to try to do, we want this to be as stable as possible, is I'm going to take some self-tapping screws and I'm going to screw this right down into that plate. Now that we've got it mounted, you can see that it's sturdy and secure. Next thing we need to do is we need to install our breakaway switch. In order to do that, we need to gain access under the grill here. We have to remove this top panel. We're going to have 8 connection points with push pins. Take a screwdriver, pop up the center, and then you'll be able to take out the core. You're going to do that with the 7 remaining that are on the panel. Once you have those off, remove the panel and set it aside. Now you can see inside here, we already have a bracket in place, so we're going to mount our breakaway switch right there. Then we'll take our included screw, washer, and our nut. Once you have your breakaway switch where you want it, 17/16 wrench to tighten your hardware down. Next, we're going to take our L bracket and we're going to try to mount it in the center, as close to the center of the vehicle as we can. We'll take a yellow paint marker. We're going to mark our holes so we can drill them out. Next, we're going to take our bracket, one of our bolts, our washer. We'll put our bracket in place. Now we're going to take a section of our DOT Airline hose, and on our operating unit, we're going to go from the air in port, we're going to route it down to our L bracket. Go ahead and drop this end down through there. Go right down. Now we're going to take one in. You want to push it right into this end right here. And you're going to push it until you hear it pop. And that's going to lock it into place. You want to make sure that you give a little bit of freedom there. You don't want it tight. You make sure you're not going to have any problems with any kinks. And you're going to want to cut this with an Airline cutting tool. The air in part that you're going to be connecting into is just like the connection point on the L bracket that you just connected to. So you feel it connect. Give it a little tug, make sure it's in there good and tight. Next, what we're going to do is on the back of our breakaway switch, you're going to have an orange and black wire and you're going to have a blue wire. You're going to need your fuse connector, and you're going to need a 3-way crimper. We're going to take the orange and black wire, we're going to take one end of our 3-way, put it into place and crimp it down. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our fuse holder. We're going to cut it in half. Clean off the covering on one, and we're going to connect it to one of the other openings in our three-way connector here. I'm going to crimp that down. Now we're going to take our fuse holder and we're going to route it. We're going to foul this red wire here over to our positive side of our battery, where this will eventually be connected. So we're just going to run it right underneath here. And we're just going to leave that sit like that for now. Next, we're going to take our blue wire coming off our breakaway switch. We ran it across. We're going to run it over to our operating unit, and we're going to connect it into one of the black wires that's coming out of it. And it doesn't specify which one, so you can connect it to either one. So now I'm going to strip the end. I'm going to take one of the provided butt connectors. Next thing we're going to do is the second black wire from our operating unit. We need to ground it. I'm going to use this ground right here that this customer is already using. Take a 10mm socket. We're going to remove this. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount our actuator inside, but to do that we need to run a hose through our main grommet that's running through our firewall. And our grommet is right back here in this corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this brace right here to give us more access. And we'll just set this aside. So now what we need to do is we need to cut a little slice in here to fit an air hose. Once you do that, take a screwdriver, put it through the hole, make sure you don't have anything back behind it that you're going to hit. So the grommet is right back here in this corner. I'm going to run a screwdriver through it. I'm going to take my Airline tube that I'm going to be connecting to my actuator and push it through there. Next, we're going to be inserting our check valve and our T connector into our brake line. Now, this is just an air line coming from the brake booster, not the actual brake line that's running your fluid. So first, let's do our check valve. Cut our hose. You're going to have a couple of hose clamps in your kit. You're going to want to put them on first. Now, the reason I say the black end goes toward the engine is that the air flows that way. Next, we need to put our T connector in. We'll go right here. Now we'll go ahead and put a couple more hose clamps where we're going to be putting our T connector. Tighten down our clamps. Once you've attached your provided 3/8" line to your T connector, before we hook it into our operating unit, we're going to put in another check valve. So what you're going to do is once you got your length cut on your hose, you're going to come back about 3 inches. And we're going to insert our check valve. Now this time we're going to make sure that the black part is going toward the operating unit. Now we're not going to have to use clamps on this due to the hose being the right size for it. Make sure when you put your hose on, you get it pushed in all the way. Next, we're going to mount our actuator on our pedal. What you want to make sure here is that the actuator is high enough that when your vehicle's not in tow and you're using your vehicle, that your foot is not going to hit this to break this plastic piece off right here. You also don't want to go so high that it's working too hard to use your pedal. So I think about right here is going to be a good spot. Take a 3/8 inch socket. We'll tighten our nuts down here. And then we're going to mount our pulley. Now you want to make sure this is coming straight back off of the actuator. So we're going to find a place back here. Now you want to keep in mind when you're putting this pulley into your firewall, you want to make sure with adjustable pedals, you want to make sure that the pedals are all the way toward the driver's seat before you put this in. I'm just trying to get to the firewall back here. Now we have an adjustment here on the top. It's going to be a number 4 Allen wrench. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole first. Next, we want to connect our Airline tube that we ran in from our firewall. Again, we're just going to push in until you hear it click. That. Now we know we have plenty of slack here. The cylinder does rotate. Next, we're going to take our Airline tube coming from our actuator. We're connected into the air out section on our operating unit. We're going to make sure, again, you don't have any kinks. Give yourself some extra so you can, you got some play in it. It's not tight. Again, we'll take an Airline tube cutter. And it's going to be the same hookup as you had on your actuator. You just push it in. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the reed switch. What this thing is going to do, this is going to provide power to the LED light that we're going to hang up on the back of the mirror so you can see it in the RV camera. Take it, we're going to slide it into place. Slide it in that slot right there. Tighten it down. Make sure it's not going to move. We're going to leave our wires hanging there for just a minute. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to run our LED light. Now it's going to go up behind our rear view mirror. We're going to need to take off this pillar to run our wire. You can see there's a cap here. We're just going to take a small screwdriver, pop that off, take a 7mm socket, and remove this bolt that's right in here. And then we can pull our A-pillar back. You're just going to pull back on it, and it should pop loose. Now we don't need to pull it all the way off. We just need to pull it back enough that when we run our wire, we can get it back behind it. Before we mount our light, I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol. I'm just going to wipe down the area. I'm going to peel off this red sticker that's on the back here. I'm going to place it in a spot that it's going to be visible. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the rest of our wire here, and we're going to run it up behind our headliner. Once you have your wire ran over into your A-pillar, we're going to get it to where it's tucked back in on this corner. Once I get it in here, I can show it to you, but now we got it tucked in there, we can put our A-pillar back into place. Next what we'll do is just pop off this cover here on the side, and you can see where my wire that I routed through here is coming down right back behind everything. So I'm going to take this, and I want to run it through here to get it over to the wires that are coming off my actuator. Now we're going to leave that panel off for now because we're going to have a power wire that's going to run from here out to the other side of the vehicle over to the battery. Now we're going to take the red wire coming off of our LED light and the black wire coming off of our reed switch that's hooked onto our actuator, and we're going to put them together with a blue butt connector from our kit. Black wire from the reed switch. Then we're going to take our black wire from our LED strip and we're going to put it in one of these 3-way crimp connectors. And then we're going to take the blue wire from our reed switch and we're going to put it in one of the other spots on the 3-way. Get it crimped down. Make sure it's in there good. And we're going to take a piece of wire and we're going to run it from here and we're going to ground it. First, we need to take some wire and we're going to run this wire out to our battery. We'll go ahead and put on the butt connector on one end. I'm going to get me some extra wire that I can run both of those. So now we'll strip back a piece of wire, put it in this side of this 3-way connector. We'll strip back the other side, put on our ring terminal, strip it down, make sure you got a good connection. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to route my wire that's going to be going over to my battery right through here where my other wires, where these other wires are running through. And I'm going to feed my wire into it like this. Now we're going to route this wire the same way, right down through here. If we take off this kick panel here, there's probably plenty of spots that we can tie into. So first we're going to remove this sill panel here. We're going to do it just by pulling up on it. Our kick panel here, we're just going to pull out. You're going to have a few clips on the back. They tie in right here. I'm going to run a self-tapping screw right there. We'll strip the end. Tie our brake light switch relay or brake light switch light into this so that anytime this brake is applied, the light comes on. This green wire here is the power wire that's coming from our brake light switch. And all we need to do is tie it into the power wire that's going up to our light. Splice the red wire. Take a butt connector. Kind of double or triple that wire up. It's pretty thin. Put a butt connector on the one end of the red. Then we're going to take our green wire and this black wire. We're going to tie them together and we're going to put them in the other end of our butt connector. Strip again. We're going to take our black wire. Tie it into our green. This, we'll twist them together. Put them in the other end of the butt connector. So now, anytime we press the brake pedal, this LED light should come on. Now that we know it's working, we'll go ahead and tie all this up, put some electrical tape around these connections here, and we'll zip tie them up underneath the dash. Now we're going to take our power wire, we're going to run it along our firewall here over to the battery side. We have our wire ran over. We're going to cut it to go inside of this ring terminal right here. Just put it in, clamp it down. Make sure you got a good hold. And then we can add a ring terminal onto our fuse holder and put it onto our positive side of our battery. Strip back the red wire on the ring terminal. I'll take a 10mm socket. I'll take this nut off the top here. Add on. Get it on, go ahead and snug it up. And then we can put in our fuse. So first thing we need to do with the air brake system is we need to come inside the RV and we're going to turn the key on and we're going to look at these two meters right here where it says rear air and front air. What we need to do before we cut any brake lines is we need to bleed those out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pump the brakes and watch those gauges until they go down. See, our meters are not moving anymore. So now that we've bled our brakes, we're going to mount our cylinder and air tank. Now you want to make sure that this valve right here is not facing straight up. It can be to the side and it can be down. We're going to use our existing hardware for this application. You're going to have a bolt and you're going to have two washers and then a lock nut. I'm going to put a washer on, a flat washer on, and then I'll follow it with another washer on the front side and then my lock nut. Then I'm going to have the same thing up on the top side here. We're going to be using a 9/16 socket, a 9/16 wrench. So what you want to do when you go down to search for your airlines, you want to figure out what frame you have. Now this is a Spartan frame, so you can see your air compressor that's going to be going to your air brakes. They're going to have green lines coming off of them. Typically your biggest one is going to be your main line. Located this one here. And you're going to determine by which chassis you have, by where your lines are and what lines you're going to be tying into. Go ahead, cut that wire, or that hose in half. Now you want to use airline cable cutters so that gives you a straight line. So these are very simple to use. All we're going to do, these are pressure fittings. You're just going to push the hose in on each side and then it locks in place. First, we want to make sure that we clean this off really good so we don't have any leaks. We're going to clean it off as good as we can get it. Some of that might be spray or something, maybe some tar. I don't know how much we'll be able to get off, but we're going to try. Push it into place and then it locks. I'll put this one in and you can see that this isn't going to move. Next thing we're going to do is we need to take this plug out and we're going to replace it with this one. Now on some applications you won't use this. There's already going to be a line here. This particular one, this one has a plug. So we are taking this plug out, replacing it with ours. And make sure that we don't cross thread that. We don't want any air leaking. So we're going to get this snug, but you don't want to over tighten. Now I'm going to take my 1/4 inch airline tubing and I'm going to put it into this valve right here that I just put into the bottom. Push it in until it stops, and then pull on it to make sure it's snug. And then we're going to route it back, and there's going to be a valve here on the end. There's going to be one on this side of this gray box, and there's going to be one in between this tank and this box. The metered airline is going to go to the center one. So I'll go ahead and put that in. Again, pull on it. You can see I have plenty of line here. So now on this other valve here, again, we're going to take part of our 1/4-inch hose, and we're going to stick it in that, kind of tug on it to make sure it's snug. It's going to be going into this tank. We'll just push it, tug on it, make sure it's in there good. Now we can zip tie our lines up. There's a valve right over here on the side. Works the same way. Push it in so it won't go in anymore. Kind of pull on it, make sure it's not going to come back out. So next what we need to do is we need to mount our T connector. So what we're going to do is we're going to install our L bracket right here. What we want is we want this to be coming out as straight as possible toward our towed vehicle. I'm going to take a paint marker. Our included hardware. A bolt, flat washer and lock nut, 11mm socket, 11mm wrench. Now that we've got our tow bar hooked up, we're going to go ahead and hook up our airline. Take this in, and we're going to pull back, make sure it connects good. Go from our 7-pole here. So now we'll hook up our safety cable to our breakaway switch. Safety chains. I'm going to make sure that these crisscross. Once we have everything hooked up, we can test it out. And that'll do it for the SMI Air Force One supplemental braking system for motorhomes with air brakes. Part number SM99243 on our 2007 GMC Sierra 1500.